Hey everybody, Doug here from 2 Plus Tough. Thank you all so much for your patience. Getting like a minute or two of a late start. Go ahead and let me know in the chat if you can hear and see me okay. The reason is it is super warm in my office, so I have a fan going, so if it is annoying, I can adjust. But I just need to know real quick, so let me know. But for everybody else, hi, my name is Doug. This is 2 Plus Stuff, and this is my Friday live show where I try to interact as much as possible with folks over in the UK and Europe area, the whole part of the world. So a lot of fans over there, and thank you all so much for watching. This isn't like my normal content where it's like pre-recorded and that kind of stuff, and this is more free form, and so I do have like a few highlights we're going to hit as far as like hobby and news, and then a main topic for the day. And so we'll just go through those, and basically how I'm going to do this is just after I finish a section, I'll open it up to questions and that kind of stuff, and then we'll have a conversation that way rather than interrupting every other sentence to be like, and this guy's coming, and this guy's coming. So anyway, you get it. So when I do these shows, I always kick it off talking about hobby, and normally I would go like to the downward cam, but there's not a whole lot to show you. Main topic for the show today concerns a GHB, but for everything else I've been doing this week, it's really been centered around a whole heckin' ton of Ungor, and so I actually have 30 of these guys. At this point, I'm doing one big batch painting of 30 of them. At this point, basically all they need is the metallics, so like all the little weapon tips and stuff like that, and there's always like some metal bits on the shield. And then honestly, just a big wash. And again, for those of you who maybe are just be tuning in, these are part of a tournament list, not really my narrative thing. So I'm not going overboard like I did for my Nurgle guys. The Beast of Chaos, the Pestilent Throng thing is really just there to support what I want to do in a tournament. Not so much something I'm deeply passionate about. So that is the quick and done side of things, and that's pretty much been my week. It's been a toasty one up here in the Pacific Northwest, and so I actually have not been in the office a lot when it comes to anything recording, writing out show notes and that kind of stuff. It was nasty earlier this week, as I'm sure I've seen people from around the world saying, and then a sprinkler line just outside my window here broke, and now it's all humid, and it turned this whole place into a frickin' swamp. So that's pretty much been my week. So not as much hobby progress as I wanted, although I think I mentioned this before, I got some Nurgle reinforcements from Tom from Warhammer Weekly. So it's just a few named characters. Horticulus Slimix was one that I was excited about. Yeah, and it was just he was clearing them out. One of the things that I got, probably the main thing, is 9 plague drones. I want to start building out the demons part of my Maggotkin, and I do want to put the actual work into those to make the custom bases and that kind of stuff to make them fit. Because, one, I like the demon stuff. It's growing on me. There are a few lists that I want to try that do involve plague drones and horticulus and beasts of Nurgle and all this kinds of stuff. So I'm very excited to try those. And then in addition to that, like, when I think about 40k, I have sisters, but they're all in the box still. And I'm like, I could just play my demons, right? If I'm already building this for one thing, why not just play it in the other thing? And yeah. So we'll do that. And so that's pretty much it for my personal hobby. I got some great videos planned for this coming week. We have a few battles set for a few different armies, and a new series starting off talking about, well, basically with the goal of helping new players get into the game, as is always the goal of the channel. And so basically picking a, what did I call that series? Hold on a second. I felt really clever when I came up with it, so I'm looking it up right now. It is the Colonel's Cheat Sheet instead of the General's Handbook. The Colonel's Cheat Sheet, and basically I pick a topic once a week for a new person, and we just kind of break it down. And so this week's coming up one is going to be talking about battle plans. So literally how you read them, why you want to use them, even though it's probably easier to not, and how you can interpret them, like what the mission is telling you to do, and how you can interpret them and build lists and that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of excited for that. That's an interesting one that people have asked about. Again, I'm not a high-level player, but I am fairly good at the game. I'm a competent player. I just switch armies so much that I can't actually master anything. So that is pretty much it for hobby and that kind of stuff. As far as games played, didn't play anything this week. Or did I? No, because last time I talked about me versus Jack with my Maggotkin, so that's about all there was. So, without further ado, we're going to move into the news. So, I'm going to put this here. This is the Warhammer community news. I'm going to pause, like I said. If you have any questions or comments you want me to answer, I always answer them between sections. So, we just finished hobby. I'm going to open it up and give you all about a minute or so because there's a delay between when I say something and when you hear it. Go ahead, ask any questions that you have. I see one up there by, I'm not going to pronounce your first name, but Bomba. Sorry, I don't want to offend. Doug, do you have an Anvil of Apotheosis hero for your Nurgle army? I'm actually thinking about that because really what it is for me, to answer your question just super bluntly, no, not yet. The reason I say not yet is because I want to design the model first, and then I want to build the rules around him. And the reason I say that is because I was on Warhammer Weekly this last week, which you should definitely go watch. The charisma level just tripled just by my mere presence. I'm just messing with you. I had a great time. Tom and Vince are our awesome hosts and friends of the show. But we were talking about Nurgle, and one of the things that I mentioned was like, one, there's not a ton, or I should say this way, named characters in Nurgle far outnumber non-named ones. And the ones that are unnamed, so you can do whatever you want with them, they pretty much come in two flavors, and that's fat guy walking and dude on a bug. That's all that there is. And so I kind of want to craft maybe do a full conversion with the Chaos Lord on Crackerjack from the Slaves to Darkness box or something like that. Just make something very, very unique and that kind of thing, where it fills a space that's not present in the army. And so that's kind of my goal. So that's a great question. And the second I come up with a plan and start building him, you're going to see pictures of him, and I will, what do I say? Send you pictures, and then I'll do an episode kind of breaking down how I built them and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, let's see. So that's a great question. Thank you so much. See, y'all are chatting with one another. That's awesome. I love seeing my friends encourage one another. Keep it up, my friends. So BioFoot78 asks, do we know when Lumineth Realm Lords are going to be added to the mobile app? My understanding from today's article, which we'll talk briefly about, is they're going to be updated when the rest of the army comes out. Like when you can buy the Battle Tome, normally not in a boxed set like it came before, that is when you'll be able to pick it up, or download it, I should say, not pick it up. When you can pick it up digitally, you can also get the War Scrolls, is kind of what I was thinking of. Jack says, wait till I'm on Warhammer Weekly next. Gonna double your numbers. Yeah. So Jack's gonna be on Warhammer Weekly this coming Wednesday. Jack, if you could confirm for me, but because you never gave me a date, bro. So I'm assuming, based on your text, it's this coming Wednesday. And talking all about Khorne, and Jack does some fun stuff with Khorne. He's my favorite Khorne player because the other ones that I've seen, at least in person, tend to go the route of just flooding the board with blood letters. But Jack does fun stuff like having the Beasts of Chaos Battalion and, taking all these different interesting synergies and the Underworld's Warband. I don't know. I love it. And Scarbrand was awesome. So go listen to him. I like when people experiment with the full breadth of an army, and for being his tangential one, because he does the shoot cast first, or at least has been in tournaments. He does some of the most interesting stuff with Khorne ever. So go listen to Jack this week. Sorry. Jacob Foxley, are you feeling more of a mortal hero or a demon hero for your anvil. For the one that I want to put this much work into, I want to do a mortal one because I generally have a mortal army. However, once I get all these plague drones and the demons that I got from Tom at Warhammer Weekly built and painted and that kind of stuff, and once I have enough to kind of do like a real demon army, then I will definitely make a hero for them, and it will be a mounted hero because I don't think the demons have like a flying mounted hero. You have Horticulus, who's riding on the back of the snail, and that's about it. So yeah. Rouse321, are we lucky to get a live stream tomorrow if the reveals are interesting? Absolutely. Yes, I actually have carved that out in my morning. I'm not going to wake up early because it's like 5:30 or 6 here in the morning. I refuse. But when I wake up, I will take a moment to review everything, and I will absolutely throw up a live show where I review stuff. So join me for that. And tomorrow morning, I'll do the same thing I did today. I'll put out like stuff on social media. So if you don't follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, it's all in the description down below, and I will put links and a countdown and all that jazz. So yeah. Here's a question. I want a new Deepkin Battle Tome. I'm Ron Burgundy. Yes. So Deepkin Battle Tome, I'd be down for that. Sorry. Wrong button. There we go. Let's see. Sorry, everybody. You're seeing the behind the curtain here as I kind of get my stuff all set up here. So yeah, let's move into the news. That's all the questions I had there. Now, as far as news goes, here's the main page. I just kind of bring up whatever happened this last week, and I just pull out the articles of stuff that really struck me as interesting. I'm going to be honest, never had any interest in the Middle-earth game until two things happened. One, I like this model. I don't know why. I just like him. And in addition to that, there's a guy locally selling like the Escape from Goblin Town set for $100, and I was like, man, I think that's like a great deal. But I don't know if I want to get into this game. I don't know. It was just a weird moment for me of like, I've never seriously considered buying into the Middle-earth strategy game. But anyway, that's all. So now we're going to move into probably the biggest AOS news, so to speak. Cody Griffin, question, are the Anvil heroes too powerful? Actually, the main topic for today's episode is going to be reviewing the Anvil and Skies of Slaughter, or Skies of Battle, whatever it's called. So we'll get to that question in a bit. But looking at the AOS and 40k apps, if you don't know, this morning the Age of Sigmar app got its update for points and that kind of stuff. It wasn't like the article that announced it went live today. When I first checked at about 8 o'clock this morning, it was not live yet on the iStore or the Apple Store. But I have no doubt that'll change. I'm sure that's just Apple like needing to quadruple check everything that goes through their store, which they do, and it's annoying. And here's the question: where are my pointy elves? The war scrolls for the units in the launch box are in there now. That's awesome, so you can ally them in and that kind of stuff. When the battle tome and the rest of your army hits the shelves in September, so that's the key, which, is right around the corner. Another huge update will add them all to the app. So there you go. That is your question there. Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Rouse. That's so kind of you. Definitely join you tomorrow. Awesome. I hope there's a lot to talk about, to be honest with you, even if it's not like AOS specific, like if it's Warcry or Underworld, some of those tangential things. I would love to know more about them. So anyway, that's our big AOS news. The app's updated, and they kind of came out with a plan of attack for the 40k app, which, it just kind of is what it is right now. And I haven't even downloaded it, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm letting 9th edition work out its kinks, and I will revisit it in like 6 months and be like, oh, that seems cool. You know what I mean? And jump in when things have kind of mellowed out a little bit. The app is a huge deal to me as far as it's how I learn. On my lunch break, I just pull it up and I just start looking through different, war scrolls. I'm not much of a list builder, but and that kind of stuff is very helpful for me. So once this all gets sorted, which will take time, but I will revisit it. I mean, people complain about it like they're so outraged, but the truth is, This is how I started AOS. I was there launch day one, playing at Mox with my buddy Rainer, and we both acknowledged this needs time to percolate. And so rather than being mad, we just came back in a few months, and now we both like it. So, it be what it be. Sometimes things just take time. So, I actually want to jump over to this one. This is a different article here. And this is John Fraser Allen's Awesome Orcs. I do encourage everyone to go check this out, because this is basically, they pick some of these awesome people in the community and show off their conversions and their paint jobs. And we've seen people from the AOS community do quite well in terms of like just having their amazing conversions shown off. I want to start off here by looking at this giant. There we go. Mouse got all sticky there. Which has, it's a Gargant. If you can't see, he used an Iron Jaws or Ardboy's helmet, but inverted it to make it a horned helm. And he's got lightning arcs from the Skaven Endless spell. I mean, he's just got all bits from everything under the sun. He's got grots all over the place. Absolutely stellar model. One thing I'm going to say, sorry, and I'm going to add it here at the bottom, that basing right there, where it's just a solid flat thing, this guy gets me. I hate basing models so stinking much. I like it when the base is just a solid black disc, because it looks the same no matter where you play. And I understand that Vince Ventrella will probably be watching this later, and he will literally be cringing in his seat. But I'm okay with that. No, I think it looks absolutely awesome. The things he designed here, they don't necessarily come from a specific realm. And so, if he didn't want to capture anything specific, he didn't have to. But look, oh man, they're all pulling on the chains. He lined everything up so well for this. And really, fundamentally, that's what this is. It's just a lot of Gargants and crazy orc junk to use them as basically mules. So here we have a huge cannon. It's got Skaven bits and orc bits and all kinds of junk strapped to this dude, who is just carrying it like he's a tank. So I don't know. I think this is just super rad. Absolutely love it. So go ahead on the community page and check that out. There's a whole bunch of pics for you to go through. I know it's like impossible, but I wish that there was like the what do you call it? The 360 rotation thing. There's an actual term for that, but yeah, so like where you can spin it around and kind of get a sense of its scale. But yeah, other news, we'll move in here. So we have our Sunday preview. This came out just after my last show, and we're getting our Necromunda House of Blades, which, if you guys don't know, I love Necromunda. It is actually my favorite skirmish game. I don't like the card aspect of Underworlds and Warcry as much as I love it. There's just some things, because the rule set is so light, you can't express them in the game, as far as like setting people on fire, and it's getting better. With every supplement they add new options and tools and exciting ways to play. But Necromunda is one of those things where like there's so much going on in the game that if it were any more than like 12 to 13 models, it would be utterly unwieldy. But because it's so few, you can really like get into the nitty gritty of what happens to each and every one of them. And the gang Escher, who are the gals up here, we just scrolled past. They are my number one gang. Like, I love them. I love them so much. Probably my favorite thing about 40k is Necromunda, specifically the Escher girls who use poison and everything. And I mean, it's basically Destiny's Child, but like in Mad Max universe, and it's just cool as all hell. You'll notice, not pictured, scrubs. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that one. One of the things that came out in, I think they were first trotted out. And if I'm wrong, I'm so sorry, but in the oh, they're not Khador. What are they? The big brutes with the red armor, Goliaths. They talked about slave ogre models, and so now we actually have the kits, and you can do any kind of slave ogre you want. And essentially, each one of these dudes is a wrecking ball, but you're not going to play with many of them, right? You're going to have very few dudes. They're going to eat wounds like a mofo, and like this guy in the back here with a missing arm, that's probably the cheapest way to run them. Like, honestly, like I'm pretty sure the cheapest way to run one of these dudes in Necromunda is to have no arms, run forward, and just headbutt people, which would be epic. I don't know if that's possible. I haven't read the rules on Ogrins because the kit wasn't coming out right away, and I was like, I'll just wait and I'll check it out later. But I think that stuff is awesome. And then there's some supplement stuff for it. I'm interested in the gang tactics for Escher, and obviously the dice, because I'm a sucker. See, I'm a sucker for dice when, one, they're legible, which all the Necromunda dice, they pretty much are. But also that, you know, they're not trying to do any crazy symbols or anything like that. Like, these are all universal symbols in the game. The broken bone, the skull, the medic thing. So I'll always buy those dice, not the other ones. And then it goes into the Lord of the Rings stuff I mentioned earlier. And I'm only going to bring these next two up because, or these next two articles, this section right here and the next article, because they're going to tie into part of the review for Skies of Slaughter. And so we're talking, this is for Astra, what is it? Imperial Navy. What's the name of this game? Imperial Assault? No, dang it. Why can't I think of the name of this stinking game? Aeronautica Imperialis. There it is. My God, that is a mouthful for a game. They're adding more ships to it. That's all. That is all. And then there is some grots being added to... Is this Blood Bowl? Yes. I didn't know if it was Blood Bowl or Blitz Bowl. I think they're packaging them separately, like differently. But these are awesome, and if you are into grots or you play a faction that uses them, absolutely, I can definitely see some cool conversions on Snotling pump wagons for Maw tribes with these guys. Certainly, without question, they will add some unit diversity or model diversity if you are someone who does use a lot of the Snotlings for Maw tribes. Like if you use them as a meat wall or something like that. Just adding more sculpts. Like, none of these look so crazy that they wouldn't fit in AOS. They look like grots, and that's awesome. And I appreciate that. So, scathing review about GW naming choices. Yes, exactly. All of the hot takes. Only the hottest takes here on 2+ Tough. And then there's some books coming out. Oaths and Conquests. I haven't seen that one. Let's see. Oaths and Conquest is an anthology of tales set in the Mortal Realms featuring stories by William King, David Geimer, Evan Dicken, and many more. There's 13 stories. Explore the heroes of order standing against the darkness of chaos, fury, destruction. I am reading that. Oh, I am so reading that. I want to learn everything there is about the heroes. Actually, we were just chatting this week in the Rerolling Ones chat. Brent put forward a question as far as like, how come people remember like Luther Huss or something like that from the old world, but we don't have the same kind of history and understanding of somebody as like Vandus Hammerhand, and we're just talking about how they kind of dropped off those first year heroes, and it was really a disappointment because I wanted to know everything about Korgus Kull, like specifically. Like, honestly, I would play Blades of Corn just to have a Korgus Kull army. No joke. He's so cool. And I don't know. I really appreciate that. So it's just strange. I don't know. Little synchronicity there, talking about the heroes in the lore, and then they have a book coming out for them. So yeah, we got that. And the only reason I had the Aeronautica Imperialis, I just can't. I trip over it every time. Basically, they're introducing just different forms of maps and things like that. And again, I only bring this section up. I honestly have very little interest in playing this game. Although I do want to play the digital version where it does all the math for you. because there is a digital version. But basically, yeah, we're just going to reference it later as we transition into our main topic. And so this is the end of the news section. And so I am going to pause my stuff here and just wait for questions. Anyone, do you have any questions or comments you want to focus on when it comes to the news and that kind of stuff? Let me get my next screen here all set up, and we will do that. So tell me down below, anything strike your fancy? There's not a lot of AOS news. I'm really hoping that this coming weekend at the reveal show that's tomorrow morning, we actually have some news, because that would be really nice. It's been a dry season for AOS, rightfully so. 40k, it's their time in the sun. It's their turn. I love it. They don't always seem to really enjoy having their time in the sun, but that's just people being people. I've said it before. Games Workshop could put a $20 bill into every single box, and people would complain about how they folded it. So we will see. 2+ sass. All right. I'll give it just like 30 seconds more if no one has any anything they want to add here in this section, and then we will move on to our main topic of reviewing Skies of Slaughter and the Anvils of Apotheosis. So, is it me? Have they been a little slow on books recently? Books? No, I don't think so, because they're still doing. If you follow Black Library on like any social media stuff, like specifically Black Library, not Games Workshop, I think they have like a Digital Mondays thing where they are always pimping a book on Monday. And they're like short stories, but there's content coming out if you're looking for it. So, yeah. Question. This actually cuts into the main topic. What factions can field aerial units? Okay. Awesome. I will point that out for you here. Do you think the preview will reveal Malarians, Elves, or Cainite Shadow Stalkers? I am unfamiliar with what a Cainite Shadow Stalker is. If you mean, like, I don't know, I can't remember if that's the name of the Warcry Shadow Elf warband. I think it's probably that, if I'm honest with you. There's been a lot of talk about possibly dropping a new Daughters of Cain book, because it's about time. I mean, they're not like grossly out of thing, but there are some issues with the book. I was having that talk with Vince and Tom this last week on Warhammer Weekly. I was just getting their thoughts, because I've played against Daughters of Cain twice, and one was it was his first game, and the other guy was good guy Chuck, who's I think it's Stormcast Strong or Strength Hammer, and we were playing a little narrative thing at Nova, so I don't have the best experience. I don't really know. But yeah, so I'm hoping those things. One thing I'm also kind of curious about with again, this is kind of news related-ish. The reveal tomorrow is, I believe, if I'm not wrong, this was supposed to be the reveal at Nova, I think, or like it would have been around that time frame. And so I'm curious if they're going to break it up into like a bunch of weeks like they did last time, right? Where they kind of just strewn along. And so, now they've had more time to prepare and that kind of stuff. I think it could be a better show. And I really, I wish them the best. They're not going to please everybody every single week. And so that's just is what it is. And so, yeah, I know that typically what they do is they have a big rush of releases after a new edition of either 40k or AOS drops, and then they kind of cooling off period while people kind of purchase stuff straight up, like if you got a new book, new rule book, the Indominus box, paint it all up, that kind of thing. Point is, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a bit more AOS focused, because now 40k needs to rest, and they're not even getting their codexes for Stormcast, jeez. For Space Marines or Necrons until October, and so that's been confirmed by GW. So we're just going to be kind of chilling. At least 40k is going to be chilling for a little bit, and I hope that means AOS is like, hey guys, I don't know. As far as things that I want, again, while I'm just talking news, this is my little preamble here. I want another Wrath of the Everchosen book, but I want it to be focused on destruction specifically. I think that would be rad. Basically, I love campaign books. I love the stories. I love the battle plans that bring them to life. I just love all of it. And so, yeah, definitely. 10,000, yes, yes, a million times yes. Give me that. Question, you think Warcry is going to get an update soon? Will it negate the cards? Honestly, they've mentioned Warcry even less than AOS in the last 3 months. I have no idea. I know that they said in the first... So I was at Nova was when they previewed the Monsters and Mercenaries book. And they did a Q&A session. So I took my question and I was like, hey, is there going to be support in the future? And they said they had about 3 years worth of support planned. And so there is things happening for Warcry. I do think it could use a second edition. I wouldn't be surprised if they rolled out a new starter set that had a little bit more fine-tuned rules. The framework for greatness is all there. The models are amazing. The board sizes just work for me. And not only they just work for me, but now they seem to be moving in that direction of using Warcry/Kill Team board sizes to help build people into full games of AOS and 40k respectively, which would be so cool. By moving away from the 4x6 standard. And there's a lot of opinions about that. For me, I only see it as a win. It's an inconvenient win, but so are most things in life. So, all right, we're going to go to the downward cam here. Boom. And let me just get myself a little situated. I'm going to blind you all because that's what I do to my fans. Lesser YouTubers would be afraid of retaliation, but me? Heck no, brave face. Alright, so with our GHB 2020, we were introduced to a few new things. One, I don't know, I keep wanting to call it Skies of Battle, and that's just not true. But we're introduced to the Skies of Slaughter supplement? Minigame? It's kind of a minigame. More so than I would say a supplement. And really what this is they have a list of specific units in the game that are obviously flyers. They have the fly keyword. And you're basically just simulating an aerial attack that's fully aerial. There's nothing on the ground at all, really, and how these flying creatures interact with one another. Now, full disclosure, I have not played a full game of it. I set it up and I went through the rules on a turn-by-turn thing to really understand this, because this question was actually asked by 2 patrons when I went in there on Patreon and asked them what they wanted me to review. I set it all up and I went through, and so I do have some thoughts as far as the actual gameplay. Me and Jack were gonna play it the other day, and we sat down and we got to this page and we're like, oh man, there's like a lot more rules here than we were prepared to sit and read. So why don't we just play normal AOS? And that's exactly what we did. And I had fun. It was good stuff. But they have their own scenarios and that kind of thing. It basically teaches you how to read war scrolls, because there are some modified ones. And battle plans that go specifically with this, as well as a campaign system. And so I'm going to say this up front. When I think about this format, I'm going to call it a format because I don't really know what else to call it. My mind immediately goes to comparing it or kind of like contrasting it with a few other things. One, X-Wing, which has pretty much been the dominant flying game for a while. Aeronautica Imperialis, which is 40k's answer to that. Then also, I remember I was playing 40k in 7th edition when the boxed sets came out and they had a flying game into them. There was like Skies of Battle or Aerial Assault or something. It was something like that. And you had this flying mini game that just involved a couple of flyers, but it was still a full-size board. It was huge. Okay, and these were like the big orc bombas and that kind of thing. I thought that was so cool. I did read the rules on that one. I wanted to play it. There just wasn't enough people who were like, oh, we'll just buy this as a discount on these models. I'm like, no, play the game. And lastly, the thing that I'll compare it to from 40k is Gorka Morka, which would be... Or is it Gorka Morka? No. It's the box set Speed Freaks, there we go. The box set they put out that just had... It was a racing game where you just take these specific vehicles from the Orc faction, and you're either putting all of your resources into going faster or to destroying each other with guns and all that kinds of stuff. And nobody ever finishes a race. You just see who can make it the furthest. I love it. Anyway, the reason I compare it to all these things is because you're taking existing models, most of which are bigger, and you're putting them in a different format. And then, of course, X-Wing and Aeronautica Imperialis, when it comes to how do we represent flying mechanics, are really important to me. And so I'm looking at this. And so it starts off by explaining how the new, or I should say edited and revised War Scrolls work. And there is a very specific amount of units. Now, I did say this when I did a video talking about how, or why I think that Games Workshop should do Path to Glory in the open play next year. You have a bunch of the kind of like iconic units from various factions. You've got, you know, the Griffins from Cities of Sigmar, the Stardrakes from Stormcast, and so on. A whole lot of stuff. And those are huge models. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you got 2 bros and a shark for the Deepkin, which is just like, that better be a cheap light skirmisher, because sweet Moses, there's no way he can stand up. You got your Phoenixes. What's interesting, you have your Phoenixes and then an anointed on each of those Phoenixes. Okay. Obviously, frigates. This is a Carrigan Overlord dream. You got all your Bloodthirsters. What they got for death? Zombie Dragon, Terrorgeist, and that's it. So if you have one of those kits in all its configurations, that is the entirety of the death section. And destruction is exactly one model, Megabosson Maw-Krusha. So the reason I jumped straight into the units is because that's literally the first page when you open up that section. I will be honest with you, it's kind of a bummer. One, because as we're looking at this, like, I have a predominantly flying army. When I play my Maggotkin, everyone is a thick boy on fly, but it's simply not an option. You know, as far as the chaos options go, you're looking at Bloodthirsters. We'll catch them all and say the Flying Greater Demons. That's Khorne and Tzeentch. Yeah, I don't know. It feels just very limited. The scope of the units involved, obviously, heavily favor Order. They have more than just about everyone else combined. I don't know if that's actually true. I didn't count them. I'm not going to. But they dominate this section. I think that's fair to say. So we have that. And in addition to that, just the specificity of the units across all these different factions is just interesting to me. It's one of those things that because of the very, very limited number of possible models to use, immediately, without going into the second page of this, I'm already in the mood of like, well, if you already own it, cool, but I don't want to go out and buy it just to play this. And so that's my opinion, of course, but so is everything else we're going to talk about. Now, essentially, what you're doing is your sequence of play is you get a whole bunch of what's called impulses, which is basically just actions, and they're basically attributing, you know, they have to define things that aren't in Age of Sigmar. So things like in Age of Sigmar, like model facing doesn't actually matter, right? Whereas here it absolutely does, because it determines, you know, how you can move. You can move in basically 45-degree arcs, so you can do 90, 45, or just go straight. And you're essentially trying to perform actions and how do I word this? What you're really doing is trying to position yourself in a way to attack your opponent. And so that's exactly what X-Wing is as well. I mean, at Aeronautica Imperialis, I don't know too well, but I know X-Wing very well. I used to be a tournament player with X-Wing. Fun fact for you all. So it's very much about positioning. You know, you have to be thinking considerably sometimes pretty far ahead about where you need to be, where you think your opponent's headed, and how can I get in a position to where he's in my like front arc and I can attack him, and that kind of stuff. So it is what it is. You here have your list of, it basically walks you through what each of the motions look like. These are all different maneuvers, and so obviously you can move forward, you can do a turn, that's on a 45-degree arc. You can do what I'm going to call a flippy spinny, for those of you who are a fan of Aussie Man reviews, which is just you literally go forward and then you flip your guy around, and then there's a side slip, which is kind of like a drift to the side. All these things are really cool. I understand that it's kind of wordy and cumbersome to have to design those when the models themselves weren't really created with that in mind, as far as like, there's no markings on the bases for 45 degrees angles and that kind of stuff, but it's a cool idea. Now, one thing that confused me when I was reviewing this and kind of parsing together how this is supposed to work was the idea of collisions. Because I got here and I was looking at this, I'm like, what do you mean they collide? So for trying to simulate an aerial battle, none of this really accounts for elevation. And the reason I brought up Aeronautica Imperialis earlier is that it does. And I mean, honestly, to a very, very small extent, so does X-Wing. Because X-Wing, they acknowledge the fact that, like, hey, if you guys are going to collide, you don't collide. Somebody flew under the other guy. Set your base as close as possible, but you can't finish a move on somebody and unless you run into an asteroid or an obstacle, don't worry about it. If you run into an obstacle, like there are little like terrain things in X-Wing, you just have the possibility of damage, but it's not huge. With this, like, no. Y'all are straight up bumper cars. And if I've never thought of a Frost Phoenix ramming into a ship, that's a KO ship right there. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was a possibility. Okay. One thing that I really do like about Imperialis here, Aeronautica Imperialis, is that they do account for elevation. You can go higher than somebody and then dive bomb on them. And I understand that would probably be very cumbersome here. But if you're going to make a format that involves models and the point is to move in 3 dimensions, meaning it's an aerial battle, you can go up, down, left, right, forward, backward, having that elevation aspect is huge. I mean, heck, even when we're playing Age of Sigmar, my flyboy, my fat Puscoil Blightlord, can use elevation because he can fly. I can sit him on top of a castle and then charge next turn where my opponent can't get me. Like, elevation matters so much, so it's so interesting to me, and I wonder what the design choice was that made them be like, we can cut that, and we're gonna just kind of factor in collisions as a means, to hurt each other or kind of, I don't want to say punish, but de-incentivize you from ramming into people. With the exception of the Maw Crusher, who should be ramming into everybody. That dude should be a pinball. Yeah, and so you have all these things. Every action you do has potential downsides and consequences. It's supposed to be a very fast-paced, like, this is it does seem very engaging, I will say that. Like, in terms of, I have this guy, and he's going to do these actions, and I hope he's in the right place, and then the next guy reveals his movement, he smashes into you, and all these things have costs, and I guess risk-reward is probably a better way to say it. And so it is interesting. It's just the small stable of models, and the lack of, like, using height as a dimension. I don't know. It is what it is. So that is the kind of the basic premise of Sky Battles. I'm not opposed to it at all. If you have those models, go try them out. Like, even when I went to Jack, and I mean, Jack hoards stuff. Like, he has a whole bunch of different armies. And I say hoards. He's not a hoarder. That's not true. But he has a lot of different things from a lot of different factions. And even with all that combined, I think he had maybe like 3 to 4 options, maybe. And like most of those were bloodthirsters, of all the units here. So that's a rough one for me. One of the things that I do like, however, is this section right here. And that is the Sky Battle Special Rules. So having the sky battle as is just doing its own thing, it doesn't really appeal to me because there isn't that elevation. There's not those very distinguishable markings. But when you get into this, where you can do ground attack, where you have an Age of Sigmar battle, and then off to the side is an aerial battle, and the two can affect one another. That is where you get me, because at that point what you're simulating is height. This is going on above you, and it matters to the people on the ground. And so I like that quite a bit. I think it just adds something. You know what I mean? Like, because in in 40K, flyers have a very specific set of rules. They feel like different units. Whereas in AOS, fly is just a keyword. No one actually cares what the model looks like, right? Like, I could take this guy's base and just have him standing all bow-legged on it and get rid of the Plague Drone altogether. And you know what? He still counts as a Pusco Blightlord. Because that's all that matters, is the key word for fly. Whereas in 40K, like, there's all different rules about the movement of the bases and how we attack flyers and all these kinds of stuff. So I feel like they're adding that, right? This is them adding, hey, the units that we talk about, the big bad flyers here, they are mean. I like that quite a bit. There's also floating terrain, which is a nice touch. And then you have, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different battle plans specifically for this. And I mean, they're not super complex. Basically, they just tell you which direction you start in as you ram into each other. This one's fun because you roll a die. Like, it's like an attacker-defender thing. Defender is always in the center, and attacker comes from a random direction. And we have... that one is like 4-on-4, which is awesome. I mean, if you have 4 Bloodthirsters, you should absolutely use every single one of them. And then there's a campaign thing as far as gaining skills for your units. I almost said flyers, but that's not really what it is necessarily. And they just become bigger, better, badder. And that's pretty much it for Skies of Slaughter. Overall thoughts. I like it in concept. The execution I'm a little bit perplexed on. Like, if this... I'm going to switch this song. I don't know what in the ever-loving heck this music is. But what I was just going to say was like... there we go. Yeah, so I was just going to say is it just seems like a very... it's a very rules light thing, which is normally a positive, but if we're going to add an entire another level to this game, I want it to be a little bit more impactful, a little more granular, have more troops. I mean, if they wanted to stick to just big models, I would completely understand, but the fact that the Idenith Deepkin 2 bros and a shark is on here is like, oh, okay, so we have the potential for these smaller little attack dudes, even if he's just meant to be sort of like a harassing unit, whereas the Leviathan, which is the big turtle, is meant to be like, you know, the Death Star. I'm on board with that, but we just need more options. And so, you know, I mean, because like, he's a small dude, lots of factions have small guys that are about the size of the Alapex, so give us more options that kind of way. Yeah, and that's the thing where it's just so strange to me. This is in the open play section, because the open play section is usually defined by, hey, take whatever models you got, throw them on the table, and we're going to show you how to have a fun and engaging time. That's kind of like the core idea, and normally they do that through open war army generators, which I do like, and there's open war, you know, battle plan creators. Those kinds of things are cool. This is an interesting one because it's saying if you have these specific models, sure, you know what I mean? But they're also strange models to have someone start with if the idea was, oh, I've always wanted to grab X model, and now I have an excuse, you know, like these are big, impressive leaders that all have strengths, weaknesses, and that kind of stuff that really don't necessarily set you up in a good way for starting that faction. Or, you know, I'm just trying to think of even the more cynical things of like, oh, it's just Games Workshop incentivizing you to buy, you know, new products and that kind of stuff, which they're a business, absolutely. it just doesn't. It just seems like a weird way to do that. So those are my thoughts on Skies of Slaughter. I'm going to bring it back to the first page here, and I'm going to pause before I go into the Anvil of Apotheosis. I am lukewarm to cold on Skies of Slaughter, but I promise you, friends, I'm fiery hot when it comes to Anvil of Apotheosis. And so I'm going to pause here before these two beats and open it up to questions. Does anyone have any questions about this format that I can look up real quick for specific answers? What are your thoughts on it? So I'll go ahead and open that up for about a minute here. Deepkin, but no Reikenor. Oh man, that's a great example. Reikenor would have been awesome. Are there any named characters here? Maybe that's why they didn't put them. I didn't see any that come to mind. But yes, that's exactly what I mean. That same size of hero. Yeah, I don't think there's any named ones. Because it wasn't Kairos. There was just the Bloodthirst. Scarbrand can't fly. Lord Change. Yeah, no named characters. Okay. But yeah, so it's an interesting one. To be honest, the lack of elevation just increases my suspicion that it's basically Sky Man of War. It basically, honestly, I mean, I know very little of Man of War. I'm not going to try and like fib and be like, oh yeah, it's just like that. I know very little of it, but from the battle reports that I watched, in terms of how the ships move and interact with one another, it does seem extremely similar. So, absolutely. Couldn't elevation be tacked onto the game? Joseph, you're absolutely right. It totally could. You could absolutely do bolt-on rules. Yeah, that's all. I mean, and honestly, it's not. You wouldn't have to do much. You would have to obviously have a counter to, you know, or some way of recording what altitude you're at, and then actions that let you increase or decrease that, so you can go up or down, and then a chart that's like, hey, if you're above this guy and you're attacking like someone below you, you get a bonus. Obviously, if it's the other way around, there's a minus. You know, it wouldn't take much. It would probably take about a half a page. That's what I would go for. Listen to this while I paint my Tzeentch demons. How we doing? Hey, John. Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Okay, well, if there's no questions, I'm going to move on. Let me find the section here. I will say the general theme of this this General's Handbook is team battles. If I had to pick like an overarching, keynote that they wanted to hit, it is team stuff. Everything is about Coalition of Death or teams and that kind of thing, which I think is cool. Frankly, I don't play them enough to get a lot of value out of these, but I like that it's there. You know, it's one of those things, if you're a collector of the General's Handbooks, which I suggest you are, go on eBay and get them for $5. When you compile all the available narrative rules together, they've given us so many tools in a toolbox to do some really cool things. So even though this specific thing doesn't appeal to me, I can absolutely see going to a game night and maybe there's 3 people there or something like that. We're like, okay, let's do it. We're doing a Coalition of Death thing, and that's awesome. That's really cool. So Anvil of Apotheosis. This, if you're not familiar and you're just starting AOS and you don't know what the GHB, General's Handbook, that kind of stuff is, the Anvil of Apotheosis in the lore is the basic forge of which they make Stormcast Eternals. The soul goes back to Ozir, and they reform them and forge them into a body and a vessel, and they give them armor, and they become living once again. They've kind of lifted that name and put it onto a character creator for pretty much just about any hero in the game. Now, the way this basically works is you determine how many destiny points you want to spend on your champion. Your options are 20 or 40. You don't have to spend them all. If you're playing a narrative game, there's no points, or you don't have to use points, I should say, if you're playing a narrative game. If you want to do matched play or use points in your open or narrative game, basically it's 10 points for each destiny level. This is kind of how it pans out, but they put them into 2 different categories of 20 and 40 just to kind of separate, okay, these are like heroes on foot or maybe a small mount, and here's like a custom dude on a Maw Crusher, like a big thing. And so that's the disparity, basically, is why that is. So you have to start with picking your destiny point limit. So let's make a dude on foot together, okay? We'll keep it real simple. So I'm going to pick the 20 destiny points. Let me get a pen and paper. Pen and paper. Who would have thought paper would have been so hard to find in my apartment? Okay. So you have decided upon the 20-point limit. So we have 20 points in our resource pool. Next thing you're going to do is pick your ancestry. Ancestry is basically your race and or background. So obviously, what you're really looking for here is keywords. So elf, elves are part of order. You can insert, wherever there's kind of a bracket, you can slide in a keyword for your army. So an elf thing here could be, you can slide in Nith Deepkin for the army. You can slide in Lumineth Realm Lords or Daughters of Cain. You know what I mean? Like, and so there's kind of an open space there. So you're just looking at ones, well, and they actually have them all listed here right below of all the options. I didn't even see that before. Yeah, and so you can pick quite a few things. You see you have, just about every kind of race. You have Bone Splitter Orcs and Iron Jaws Orcs. They are a little bit different. Mordant, which is Flesh Eater Courts. Malignant, which you're looking at like Night Haunty type stuff. Skeleton, Skink, Vampire. Throw it up here in the chat. Does anyone know of a specific type of unit that is missing? Because they have Dwarden, okay. Skink, Vampire, Skeleton, Stormcast, Sylvaneth, Skaven. They have Grots. They don't have Troggoth, which would be like trolls. And what else? Cody, I saw your question reminder. I will absolutely get to that. We're going to build a hero together, and then we're going to review it as far as like if it's a good thing or not. So anyway, but most stuff. I mean, there's something for at least every army where you can tack on a cool hero. Okay, so let's. What do we want to build? Let's build. We'll go with the chaos thing. We'll make a chaos lord on foot or something like that for my Nurgle. So we look at mortal is the keyword that we are going to use, and you can see down below the armies that this can be a part of is Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, Slaanesh, and Slaves to Darkness. Now, when you're choosing this, if you look here in the top right, it says 4, so you have to deduct 4 from your available destiny points pool. So now we have 16 left, and we have a mortal Nurgle dude. Alright, so then that's the next one. Step 3 is the armory. So, when we crafted this dude, you see that he gets most of a profile, but not the entire thing. He has a movement stat, a wound stat, save, and bravery. However, he has no attack profiles. And so the next thing for the armory is you are basically picking a combination of weapons and shields and that kind of stuff, where you can basically, deck out your hero with whatever weapons you want. And so there are a few options, and I like how many options there are. You got a one-handed weapon, two-handed weapon, makes sense. One-handed weapon and a shield, two-handed melee weapon. What is it? Oh, I see. You can have 2 one-handed weapons or 1 two-handed weapon. That makes perfect sense. One hand bow and one one-handed melee weapon. This is so hard for me. One bow and okay, so a hand bow versus a bow. It's the same thing. Okay. Basically, you can see the weapon options and their profiles are listed in the table below. For each weapon option, costs a number of destiny points. Basically, you can deck your guy out with a whole bunch of stuff if you want, and just be absolutely insane. That's not true. You have to pick one of the following. So he only gets one of these weapons. I apologize. That was my bad. But essentially, what you're looking at here is you have just standard weapon profiles. It gives you the range, number of attacks to hit, to wound, rend, damage, and the last one is DP, how many destiny points it costs. And so I'm just going to pick one at random. We're going to go with a two-handed axe, because I think axes are awesome. Actually, no, we're going to go with the scythe. The scythe is a Nurgle thing. Gotta reap that harvest. So that one costs just 1 destiny point. So now we're down to 15 with a scythe. So now we got a bro, and our bro has a weapon. Moving on to the next step is the archetypes. Now, I should back up here. Don't be discouraged. A lot of these are super lackluster when it comes to attacks if you want to build a fighty hero, because there's ways to upgrade and augment their abilities in combat later on. So just kind of pick a weapon that sounds cool, and then you can make it kind of be whatever you want later on. So just that's a pin right there. Next is archetypes, and essentially what you are asking here is, do you want your hero to be a combat-oriented hero, so like a commander is what they call it, a wizard, in which case they give you a list of spells you can choose from, or an acolyte, which is basically a priest. So if you are doing a clan pestilence thing, you would pick the Skaven keyword, make it a priest, and that's kind of how that would function. I love the fact that they took the time to make a priest version, because it's a thing that we don't. There's not a ton of priests in Age of Sigmar, like that keyword specifically. There's not a huge amount of them, and so giving everyone access to this cool thing, it's just little, you know. He has prayers that do D3 mortal wounds, and one that gives him a 6-up shrug to wounds or mortal wounds. Like, that's awesome. It's just a very simple thing that not every army has, but now we all have some means of access to it. Really cool. The spells are pretty awesome. We're going to talk here about the commander one, because it is the one where we see a lot of people raise complaints, as well as I think one of the spells. We'll go into that, but basically these archetypes cost nothing. There's no points cost associated with them, and so if you look at commander, there's restrictions. You can't be a death mage, so there's no super inspiring fighty necromancers or master clan, which is an interesting one. But that's your Grey Seers, basically, your wizard Skaven. Pick one of the following command abilities and add it to your hero's war scroll, so you can lead the attack. Use it at the start of the combat phase. If you do, pick a friendly unit wholly within 18 inches of this hero. Add 1 to hit rolls, which is sweet. Adding 1 to hit rolls, absolutely. Now we've pretty much, as a game, gotten rid of all of the on a 6+, this effect happens. For the most part now it's unmodified 6s, and so it won't affect that. But man, if you are rocking a unit of like witch elves that are fully buffed to the 9s and you drop that on them, they just get so freaking nasty. The other option is lead the defense, and you use this at the start of the combat phase as well. If you do so, pick a friendly unit, add 1 to save rolls for that attack. And honestly, that's a Nurgle thing. I want that. So we're going to do commander, lead the defense, because you know what's really like the only thing nastier than 10 Blight Kings is 10 Blight Kings that have a now 3-up save and some means of getting an after save on them, which there are a few. There's a lot of ways in Nurgle to do that. So yeah, that's an interesting one. No, we already went over the priest ones. As far as praying to hurt an enemy unit, D3 mortal wounds is nothing to shrug at. And then the Shield of Faith is a 6-up shrug for wounds or mortal wounds. Now looking at the wizard scroll, basically restrictions: no Dwarden, Khorne, or Saurus. So sorry guys. Pick up to 1 spell from the table below, and basically they become a 1-cast, 1-unbind wizard. And you have Aura of Protection. Roll a dice, you get a 6-up shrug. Again, Curse of Damnation is super nasty, which is casting value 7. Pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of the caster, invisible to them. The unit suffers D3 mortal wounds, which is already good. In addition, subtract 1 from save rolls for attack that target that unit until the the start of your next hero phase. So you're basically making people's saves worse by 1. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Jacob, I just saw your question. Let me just get through the spells and we'll answer that because it's a great one. Wildfire. Wildfire has a casting value of 6. Pick 1 unit. Roll 1 dice for each model in that unit. And that is within 12 of the caster, invisible to them. For each 5 up, suffers 1 mortal wound. If the unit only has 1 model, roll 3 dice instead of 1. So that's an interesting one. It's a very toned down version of some existing spells that are very, very good at wiping out hordes. And I like it because it can be on something fairly small. You know what I mean? Or conversely, it could be on a weird knob shaman who somehow got on top of a Maw Crusher and just pile drive straight into this dead center of the opponent. It's up to you. And then Raise the Dead. Pick 1 friendly unit. You may return a number of slain models that have a combined wound characteristic of D3. So a little way to like heal up some units. Now the question that was asked in the chat here by Jacob, and this is a great question. If you make a hero or wizard, do they then get access to the faction-specific spells that a wizard normally would? Now, we're gonna pick on the Nurgle stuff here, specifically because the Chaos books probably have the most restrictions when it comes to what you can and cannot take. So, for example, when it comes to Nurgle, here's the profile with the keywords we have. The only thing that matters when it comes to the Chaos one is there's different spell lores for if you're a mortal, a demon, or whatever that faction-specific thing is. So like Rotbringers, or Bloodbound in Khorne, or Acolytes in Tzeentch, or whatever. So to answer your question directly, yes. Because in my instance, he is a mortal Nurgle. Those are the keywords we chose, and those are the only guidelines for that. So yes, he would get whatever spell he chose from here, and that would come on his war scroll. But in addition to that, he would get 1 faction-specific spell. Now, for some of these, you just have to look at the war scrolls, because I don't know every single requirement for every single book. Even if I specifically, for example, in Nurgle, made literally any other kind of hero, all that Nurgle cares about when it comes to the spell that lets you spin the wheel, all Nurgle wizards know that. Doesn't matter if you can put Nurgle anywhere on their war scroll, they get it. And so that's an interesting one. But yes, they would generally, at least for what we're building now, he would get access to the mortal spell lore in addition to the Cycle of Corruption one that lets you change the wheel, because all Nurgle wizards know that. Let's see. Mercurial Sea, you pick out a good point. Picking Elf lets you pick the Lumineth keyword, but it won't give you the Cathalar or Alarith keywords required to use their lores, I don't think. Let's see. Because that's an interesting point. And it was brought up in the FAQ. Someone asked, like, you don't. I think they were asking specifically about a Dwarden thing, but yeah, they were looking for like a lodge keyword for the Dwarden. But it's the same idea here, right? There's within a faction there are then smaller subsets of keywords that are important, like that exact thing. So yes, you're correct. This elf, as is, would not have access to those spell lores because their spell lores are locked behind Alarith and Cathalar. So no, they would not. And so that's an interesting thing. Now, in the FAQ, when someone asked that question, Games Workshop's response was pretty much exactly what you'd expect, which is, it's in the narrative section. Just add the dang keyword and ask your opponent, hey, is this cool? Because who's going to say no? However, if there are events that give you a free Anvil of Apotheosis hero or let you take them at their points expense, my understanding is that would probably be a bit more rigid when it comes to that. So kind of keep that in mind. For me personally, the intent obviously is to let you build heroes. If somebody wanted to do that, I would not argue at all, especially because anyone who has even had a passive glance at the Lumineth Realm Lord book understands that there's like no heroes to actually use their spells. So it's like, why would you say no? Just throw the guy a bone. Anyway, so those are the archetypes. I picked Commander, lead the defense, because Nurgle's all resilient and that kind of stuff. So it just depends on your faction and how their keywords operate. Now, step 5 is utterly optional, and I like that. It is a bestial companion. Now, these come in 3 flavors. There's a minor beast, which is kind of like if you just put something on someone's on a model, but they don't ride it or anything. So like the little squig next to the Wurgog Prophet, or what are some other ones? The fish that fly next to, like, or all around a hero from Deepkin. Yeah, you see maybe there's a grot hanging on to his buddy who's a big orc, all that kind of stuff. Those would be minor beasts, where there is a separate profile for their attacks, but they're not like, a full mount or something like that. Oh, I guess the Corn Dog for Korgur's Call, where the Mighty Lord of Corn has a Corn Demon Flesh Hound with him. That would be a minor beast as well. So there's that, and it gives you. And there's a lot less decision making here. It just straight up has your destiny point values. It gives you their stat line. It in no way changes your hero stat line unless it says so specifically. So, for example, with the minor beasts, add 1 to your hero's wound characteristic. For the other ones, I'll get into those because it's basically trying to modify what kind of hero you are. And you get a pretty unimpressive, for all of them, all around melee weapon profile, and then the keywords to go with it, as far as like, hey, if you get an artifact of power, no, you can't give it to the beast, all that little jargon that most folks would never think to do, except for that one turd in your gaming group that no one likes to play with. Anyway. any whomst, one could say. So that's the minor beast. Then there's a mounted one, which adds 2 to your hero's wound characteristic, and it changes their movement to 8 inches. So whatever it is, they're not going anywhere fast. I mean, the fastest mount out of the gate is about as fast as one of my fat Nurgle Blight Drone dudes. So kind of keep that in mind. You're not speeding anywhere. And there are restrictions, like, for example, you can't have a Bulgor or a Dragon Ogre riding on the back of a mounted beast, which is just, I mean, I kind of get the Dragon Ogre because he's already kind of his own mount, right? He's like a centaur type thing. But the Bulgor would be amazing. Put the Bulgor on a Maw Crusher and have him do like one arm that's straight up, like he's doing the Doctor Strangelove riding the nuke. That'd be amazing. But a man can dream. That's all right. And then the last one here is Gargantuan Beast. Add 8 to your hero's wound characteristic. So, in our example, I think the Mortal Nurgle guy had 5 wounds. So now he's at 13. He's like a good small hero on a mount. Nothing super crazy by any stretch whatsoever. And change your hero's move characteristic to dash. And then for the Gargantuan Beast, it gives you a damage table. Because now you've entered into that echelon of units that has to keep track of wounds and that kind of thing. And as far as that goes, honestly, it's kind of on par with the other ones. Again, none of the basic stat lines are incredible because now that we have our dude made, we get to go to the fun part, which is options and enhancements, okay? So it starts off, hey, if, yes or no, you picked a beast, you can also spend destiny points here to upgrade that beast. And so just to recap here, for the minor beast with you get an extra wound and that guy's attack profile. That one cost 6 destiny points. The mount is 8 and the Gargantuan Beast is 15. For my money, I think mount is the best value, simply because it increases your movement. So whatever ability you picked before in terms of being a commander or a priest or a wizard, you can now move that faster across the battlefield. You're not so big that you have to care about a damage table chart, which is, it's just nice. But yeah, I don't know. I like it. Like, as someone who uses 8-inch move models a lot, it's a good place to be. They don't have to be movement 14 or whatever the junk that the Lumineth cavalry can do. Omniphage, it's been so long, buddy. How you doing? And so I'm gonna skip a bestial companion for my specific Nurgle guy. Although I could do something like having a swarm of Nurglings with him, so I would probably choose a minor beast type thing. I'll see what I want to do, but some of the upgrades you can do is give them fly, because these are not inherently flying models, and that's important, so you're buying keywords here. You can add a breath attack, which is, it's kind of like the Dracoth units from Stormcast, where they just pick a point and barf lightning on it. And then just things to increase your charge, subtracting bravery. You can add more attack profiles to them. Like this one's a lashing tail, which I think the Chaos Lord on Manicore used to have, which is like when everything's done, see if you whip somebody in the face with your tail. And some of them are reserved for certain things. Like for example, there's 2 here reserved for Gargantuan, so the biggest, baddest creatures. And it's stuff like, Stomp. When you're done fighting, roll a 2 up and everything around you suffers D3 mortal wounds. So it can be pretty nasty. What I will say, though, is that these upgrades are expensive. When you consider the fact that you're already paying 6, 8, or 15, right, that Stomp ability is awesome. And you're like, oh man, 2 destiny points, that's great. But it's 17 total, and you haven't even made your hero on top of it good at all. That's next. So kind of keep that in mind. It is what it is. And so, last is characteristic enhancements and abilities. Now, by our math, when it comes to our defensive Nurgle hero that I'm building, again, this is not one that I'm necessarily going to model, but I'm just kind of walking through the steps and that kind of thing. We have 15 points left, which is pretty great. And so these are pretty much the same things that we went through with the Mout. There's more of them, and they kind of engage different parts of the game. So for example, they have some that are based on what archetype you chose. Or not archetype, but battlefield role or whatever. So some are just for commanders, some are, the Archmage one is just add 1 to casting and unbinding rolls. If you went the magic route, which is pretty great, same thing for priests. Zealot is fun. You can run and charge in the same turn. I can't think of an army that's like, man, I hate running and charging in the same turn. And then GW was like, man, people love that rule so much, let's just make a whole army out of it. And then we got Beast of Chaos. We also have stuff like regeneration, increased rend. There's a bunch here to increase your actual stat line, so like +1 to your save, add 1 to your wounds characteristic. What's interesting is that as far as I can see, right, in their description here, nothing limits you from buying something more than once. And so for example, if I wanted to have a Nurgle guy and you're like, 5 wounds is not Nurgle-y, right? We come in at 7 or we don't come at all is kind of how Nurgle works with its heroes. Yeah, absolutely. I would pay 1 destiny point for each wound I get, sure. And then pay 1 for a save. No, you pay 2 for a save. So let's do that. Let's make our profile. I want a 4-up save. He normally has a 5-up, so now we're down to 13. But we have a 4-up save. And we're gonna buy 3 wounds. So that brings us down to 10. It says pick, let's see, the final step is to pick any other options for your hero. Each cost the number of destiny points listed on the table. So yeah. And then there's also stuff that modifies the weapon. You can add more rend to higher damage, reroll ones to hit, +1 to hit, +1 to wound. Like, all the different levers that you pull when you're building a hero, you can pull them to kind of create whatever you want. And that's the basic idea. Will asks, are there that many ethereal heroes incoming? Yeah, let's see. There was one, I believe, that gave you ethereal. Let's see. Yep, ethereal right there. Ability. Ignore modifiers. Yeah. We're going to answer the question here. It says, using your hero, once you've created it, you're ready to field the battle. They give you a great example. And this, when I think about using this, I think I still like to play games with match play points. However, one thing that I think is awesome is this campaign game section. If you're playing a campaign, such as whatever, they list off an example they have in this book, you could agree that after each battle, players accrue D3 destiny points with which to improve their hero. So maybe if you're doing a campaign, right, I would personally be like, hey, we're going to play a campaign, 2,000 point games is normal, plus you get a free hero, and that hero is who we're going to be following the story of throughout this game. Build him, you get the 20 destiny point option, build the hero you want, and he'll grow throughout the campaign. Like, wouldn't that be so cool? Oh, that'd be so cool. Open play, just do whatever you want. And then match play is they basically say multiply the number of destiny points by 10. Now, that's an important one when people talk about the match play thing, and now we're going to kind of transition away from how it actually functions and more into... When this dropped, people were like, oh yes, I will find a way to break this and make GW regret ever putting cool, fun things out for narrative players. Honestly, everyone who brags about how great they are at breaking games sounds like that in my mind. Anyway, but that's me. That's pre-coffee, Doug, so I'm going to take a hot sip here real quick. All right. So, as far as the ability to kind of break the system, because there was no limit on using multiple of these, enhancements more than once. At least I didn't see it in the FAQ. If it's in there, throw it in the chat. I can't look at both screens at once, but you know what I mean. You can pick the 40 destiny point option and not give him a mount at all and just deck him out with insanity and have him be a buff piece beyond all buff pieces. And so that's a problem when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so, but that can be easily solved by you can only take a characteristic once. It is what it is. Beyond that, what I will say, a lot of the sticking points has less to do with the ancestries. These are fine, to be honest with you. They're just keyword inserts. I already went over the one gripe that people had, that some battle tomes require specific kind of sub keywords to be able to use spell lores and that kind of stuff. And I think that's a reasonable one that you and your opponent can just discuss. They don't need to list every single sub faction. That would be unwieldy. So I have grace on that one. I like the fact that none of the attack profiles, none of these are awesome. You know what I mean? When we got the if you guys remember the Dark Oath War Queen when Malign Sorcery came out, I was so excited for that model. And then you look at its attack profile and you're like, huh, oh yeah, it's just a lady running at you with an axe and a shield. That's all it is. It's kind of like that, where you're like, oh yeah, I can just model it and it's exactly what it looks like, and it's not much more than that. Not a whole lot of stuff to chat about, It's kind of a plain profile. It is what it is. So I think, again, just like with the ancestries, that's not an issue. Where things kind of start going off the rails is beyond step 3. For example, with archetypes, the Acolyte one is fine. Acolyte is the one where you pray and you deal D3 mortal wounds, or you do a 6-up shield that saves you from wounds or mortal wounds. Now, the reason I say that's not a big deal, and the Aura of Protection spell, is because in the current rules set in GHP, now you can't have multiple things stack. You can't have 6-up saves and that kind of stuff. You have to kind of pick the best one. And so, that to me is that's just fine, right? I don't have a problem with that at all. As far as the wizard stuff goes, all the spells, they are not that bad. The only one that can be crazy is if you go with the gargantuan, the wizard riding a gargantuan model where you have a huge base and a lot of wounds. Nothing dictates base size, so you could have a dude, I'm going to use Jack's Varangard here as an example, who's this big on an Archeon pie plate and have him be a wizard and affect everything in 12 inches of that pie plate. It's dumb. You shouldn't have any friends at the end of the day, but you can do that. So just kind of keep that in mind. And that's the wacky part, right? Where they set an intention for you to make the hero, but because everything wasn't so tightly worded, yes. Someone asked the question, I think it was Cody, can you make a broken hero? Totally. But I think that has more to do with the things they didn't talk about, like relative base size and that kind of thing, over these combinations are just bad. Beyond that, the commander one is interesting because it really depends on the kind of army. So for example, picking a unit adding +1 to hit, honestly, if you're a guy who like, man, you know what my favorite unit is? Like Crypt Ghouls, right? And they're like, I love Flesh Eater Courts and I just want a bunch of Crypt Ghouls. Adding +1 to hit on their crummy little hand attacks as they like throw bones at you, not a problem. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Yes, they're a horde army in that sense, and a lot of more of those attacks can go through. I don't even care. Where it gets insane is where you do stuff like Daughters of Cain, when all their spells and command ability and synergies are working together. +1 to hit is just punishing. Like it is just. I think in the last week I mentioned the term dick punch. It's just what it is. And the same goes for lead the defense, where in general it's totally fine. But man, +1 to your save. When you're a Stormcast army, you got the Liberator, you got the guy holding the lanterns, and now you got +2 saves, re-rolling ones. That is where things get really, really gross. And so, I mean, and I say gross, not in a sense of like hyper effective, although of course it is. I mean gross in the sense of this ceases to be fun. Like, you know what I mean? Like a 2-up re-rolling ones save for a Liberator is not fun to play against. And so that is the issue. I understand that. And so these are two specifically for the commander where the army becomes much more relevant to understanding if these abilities are super good or not. With the spells, my biggest thing, because a lot of them have to do with the range from the caster, the fact that they didn't really spell out base sizes and that kind of stuff is the problem. Because none of the other ones like really measure a lot of stuff from the model. I mean, like they technically do, right? One's within 18 inches for lead the attack or defense, and the prayers all have a range. I get that, but the sweeping ability of Wildfire, where you're counting the number of enemy models in a unit that are within a certain distance to make the effectiveness of a spell matter, that's very different than like just pick a dude near you. So, and that's one where like all of these archetypes and their abilities, I have absolutely nothing bad to say about them, but I understand that people who know their factions inside and out can look at this and be like, holy frickin' smokes, I have found a way to make this, ungodly good for my army, because they're kind of, I don't know how to word this, like on the surface level, these all sound incredibly reasonable, but there are instances, because armies are so different, where it's a bit too much. That would be my opinion. Moving on, when you get into the Bestial Companions, again, not really much of a base size. Let's see. Yeah, they give you examples of like a gargantuan beast is a truly colossal mount, such as a dragon, thunder tusk, or manticore. Choose a compatible, basically they're telling you like, don't be a dick. But also, that's not a rule, that's a suggestion. Because there's no rules here about base size. And so that's an interesting one. And I feel like if somebody uses the base size thing, it's generally pretty clear that they're gaming the system, so to speak. So take that as you will. But for what it's worth, I love the idea. I didn't expect them, when they first announced like, hey, we're going to make a hero generator, I did not expect them to include stuff for Bestial Companions. I thought maybe it would be like, plus this amount for a mount, and here's your horse, right? Or plus this for a generic dragon type thing. Not so much of like being able to customize, having a little squiggly dude like a grot or a squig or a flesh hound, or corn flesh hounds, what they're called, I think. That kind of stuff is really fun. Like, I love that. That's so fun. I don't think minor beasts will be used a ton. Mounted stuff for sure, because being able to move the buffs and the keywords around that we talked about before, really, really important. And then gargantuan beasts, it's a huge investment. But the truth is, like I said, for the people who are trying to break this system, it's as easy as could be, because why would I buy a gargantuan beast unless I want a big base? You know what I mean? But then again, bases don't matter in this system, specifically for Anvil of Apotheosis. So it's just kind of a weird thing. I don't know how to feel about that one. I think they should have at least given us a range. You know what I mean? Like, so for most heroes, your range is 25 mil to 40 mil or something like that. And hey, if you have a minor beast, you can maybe bump that up to the next size, because Gorgus Skull is pretty big when he has the flesh hound on there. Like, he's a big old base. And then kind of just giving us some guidelines, I think that would have gone a long way. But giving us ways to customize the beasts themselves, so cool. Really do like that. I think that's a straight win. And then the characteristics and enhancements, I'm a little torn, because on one hand, I don't want them to put a limit of you can only choose a thing once, because picking up 3 extra wounds for my Nurgle guy is so flavorful, because really they are 7 to 8 wounds heroes in Nurgle, right? And I want that consistency. At the same time, I also understand that anyone who is looking to game this system can look at this and be like, oh, okay, obviously if I want a guy who's just gonna, go trek, walk through my opponent's army, I'm gonna take 40 destiny points, I'm gonna pick pretty much everything here, sometimes double or triple of them, and because I picked, for example, my mortal guy, he doesn't move as slow as Gotrek, and he gets the speed bonuses from the rest of the army. He's going to be booking it. Imagine Gotrek in your face turn 1, because he has the Nurgle keyword and can run and charge next to a tree with all the speed bonuses and that kind of thing. Like, that is the problem when people complain about the balance of this thing. So, you ask, is there a way to make a broken hero? Sure, there is, 100%. There's no doubt. This system of the Anvil of Apotheosis, it's in the narrative section, and it just gives you a slight option. Hey, if you do want to try a match play game, first confirm with your opponent about the kind of hero you're going to take, what its goal is to do, and how it fits into your army. And here's a rough guideline for points if you want to throw it in there. Matched play and tournament competitive play are not the same thing. For example, me and my friends, the Rerolling Ones guys, we play narrative missions with flavorful armies, and we of course still use match play points. And so this is the kind of thing that's perfect for us. As a narrative player, no, I'm not going to put a Grot Wizard on an Archeon pie plate so that I can maximize the spell to, super buff or nuke half a Gloomspite Gitz army. It's not going to happen. And if you try to take that to an event that has that kind of stuff, that's between you and the TO. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. So I don't know. I think it's a good system. I'm glad they put it in the narrative section, and I'm honestly quite happy that they gave even just a cursory estimate of, points to destiny point thing. Of course, it's not 100% accurate. Of course it's not. You crazy? No. However, if you build a reasonable hero, like we built I think a very reasonable small Nurgle foot hero. He exists. He has a weapon. I have 10 extra destiny points. I can add some cool things to him, but really he's just there to support the troops by giving them a better defense. I would take that in my Nurgle list right now. As is, he's 100 points. That's so reasonable. That's so reasonable for a small little buff piece. That's not going to kill much and move slow. And that's the thing where not a lot of folks, when they look at this in a vacuum and they're like, oh man, like this hero seems super cheap or it seems super expensive, because a lot of this stuff, if you go through and you use the destiny points and you buy all these things, you realize pretty quick that if you put a points value to it, there are better deals inside your army. Like, so for a video this last week, I think it was yesterday, we built a Bone Splitters hero from a short story that I really enjoyed. It was Stoneclaw. And what I found was, like, a normal Bone Splitter hero, the big boss, cost 90 points in the Battle Tome. But when I built my guy, he was like 100, 110, you know? But I'm like, well, I mean, honestly, if I was going to an event, I would choose the big boss over what I made here, because he does more for that specific army. Like, he's a better bargain. And so unless you are specifically going out looking for ways to, I don't know, manipulate things like base sizes or the number of enhancements you can take or that kind of stuff, like if you're not intentionally doing that, I have found most of the heroes I generate with this are really either on par or slightly worse than just picking a hero from my battle tome. Now, the exceptions to this are when you can do stuff like, for example, Nurgle doesn't have a plethora of mounted heroes that move fast enough to get buffs around. So being able to choose a mount changes dramatically the landscape of my faction, because now I can get buffs where I need them. That kind of thing. So that is probably the part where value discrepancies kind of crop up. Like, I just literally don't have access to that outside of Anvil of Apotheosis for my Nurgle army. Whereas, so that would make him more valuable all of a sudden. So there's things like that. Just kind of keep all those things in mind. As far as, like, I can't give you a blanket statement. It's garbage or OP, as is the internet parlance of the time. What I can say is, if you use it the way that it's very clearly intended, and you just build an alternate hero that matches what your army does, in general, it's perfectly fine. And not only fine, it's fun as hell. And it gives you a lot of reason to kit bash and look for different bits. I mean, the fact that you have mounts and different weapon options that might not fit, like, for example, with like Nurgle, they don't do a lot of stuff with like hammers or a flail, or, and I guess there's flails for sure, but mage's staffs, or, you know, things like that. I can include different bits and options into my army, and it's just opportunities for me to do that. So, like, all of those things are a home run to me. Is it abusable? Yeah. Is it in the narrative section so that you understand that maybe, hey, you're being a dick if you abuse it? Yeah. Absolutely. So, you know, take it for what it is. I had a lot of fun building the Bone Splitter hero. There are some wonderful examples of custom heroes here that they made, as far as, like, you know, White Kings on horses, and this is an Ironjaw mega boss on Brute who has like a metal face. That's just so cool. And so I think even just based on the models that show up here, I think that's their intention. But yeah, I do. What I will say is this: if it wanted to be used in matched play, I would go one of two ways. If I was having a narrative event, and, you know, a narrative event meaning there's an overarching story, but hey, we still have to, like, have a common tongue into how we build lists, so we're going to use points. I would probably either say put a max on the number of destiny points you can use, so say 200. So 20 destiny points. We're going to keep it to small foot heroes, no gargantuans, nothing like that. With a base size requirement, your guy can be on a 32 or a 40 or something like that, or 25, 32, 40 are pretty generic. And then the other option you can do is, say, you get 20 destiny points and it's free, meaning we all bring 2,000 points armies, and hey, here's a little spice from a hero that does a cool thing. And that's great because at that point you can, over the course of that campaign, add destiny points and then they can spend them and make their hero better. I think that could be really awesome. So this could be really cool if you use it in that 10 or 20 below cap range. Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of my thought, is either giving it for free or limiting, well, in both senses, limiting how many you can spend destiny points, unless you want to do something very specific, which is awesome. I mean, honestly, I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is pretty much the only way I'm ever going to get a flying hero for my Skies of Slaughter thing, but that's kind of a different story. But, you know, it's cool. So if I was doing a campaign thing, that's what I would do. I'd probably give it to people for free. It's just a tack-on thing to your army. I remember locally, when Fantasy Battles was still around, there was an event called Regiments of Renown, and you built your normal army, and then you got a free unit that had a really crap generic profile. Everybody has started with the same generic crap unit, and then over the course of the game day, which I think was 4 games, you would assign attributes and random skills and that kind of stuff, and all of a sudden by the end of it you have a very flavorful unit with a unique story to tell, and I think that would be really cool. So that's all nice. As far as like actual competitive tournament play, I'm going to level with you. I don't think it belongs there. There's too many gaps that need to be filled in terms of base sizes, modeling for advantage in terms of what the model can actually see, because yeah, your grot might be on 25 mil base, but if that base then has a 12-foot tall, pole on it that your grot is standing on, and it's everything within 12 inches of him that he can see the whole dang board. He can probably see the neighbors next door, that kind of stuff, where there's always going to be people who think that they're really funny for finding a way to ruin everybody else's fun. It's the nature of humanity. It's just what it is. Take it or leave it. So that would pretty much be my thoughts on that one. And I'm gonna kind of wind down after that. My throat's kind of getting a little dry, but I'm gonna take a shot of coffee and leave it open here for questions. So what do you guys think? Oh wait, Salvadorn, here we go. Thank you so much. Every enhancement can only be taken 3 times. Page 56 under 56. Aha! Page 56 under characteristic enhancements and abilities. That's so weird. Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much for pointing that out. I totally missed that. What I think is just really weird is that for the other ones, like for the mount stuff, yeah, the armory, the description of the rules of it are there. Same thing for archetypes and bestial companions, but not... So, okay, so I was looking in the wrong place. I don't know why that information is not with it, but whatever. Thank you for pointing that out. Super excited to get to use this. Been making a menagerie of Ogre Beast Rider Force, so it fits perfectly. That's awesome. Awesome. Overall, I think it's a cool system. I'm really glad it exists. I would love, in my perfect world, a campaign book would come out and it would encourage us to build cool, unique heroes and, have them grow over time. I love the idea. They said it was campaign play, but it's not matched narrative or anything. Campaign just means a series of games where they're linked, and having your character gain destiny points over the course of that and grow and get new skills and abilities would be really cool. It'd be really funny if all of a sudden in game 3 your dude learned to fly. Just randomly, just straight up like Goku, just started lifting off the ground, not knowing what was going on. And it looks like John just spilled a whole tub of Nolan oil. Sorry, buddy. Hang in there. That's okay. We're about to wrap up, so you're not going to miss anything. Get to cleaning. So, friends, thank you all so much for joining me. This, obviously, like I said, went out to patrons. Let me get their names up so I don't butcher the pronunciation here. We got Corey Bragg and Alex Godfrey. Thank you both so much. And friends, that completes the specific requests I had from patrons. If there's something you'd like to talk about, with this kind of same conversational tone on Fridays, go ahead and leave in the comments down below, because I'm going to turn the chat off so I won't be able to see it. So comments down below, and we'll tackle it in the future. So thank you all so much for joining me this fine Friday. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you hopefully tomorrow when I'm doing a review of what we saw at the GW reveal. So again, thank you all so much. And